But first, on today's show, only 14% of all employees spend most of their day doing work they enjoy. And that draws on their strengths. And 80% of employees who quit their jobs do so as a result of conflicts with their employer or supervisor. But is there a way to reduce these kinds of issues from developing before a prospective employee is hired? Jan Vanderhoop from Hiring Smart says absolutely, and he joins us now to explain the problem. So, is it in the process of hiring that sometimes the perfect match isn't made?
It's absolutely in the process of hiring.
Really?
And when you look back at the way organizations today look at candidates coming in the door and evaluate them for opportunities, the process really hasn't changed much in the last 50 years. The resume really didn't come into vogue until after the Second World War. And it was at that point where people started to put everything together, arranged in a specific format on paper to say, all right, here's my background, here's my credentials, here's my experience, here's the kinds of things that I've worked on. And so for that long a period of time, we've used those as admission tickets inside organizations to say, all right, Matt, if this is what you bring to the table and this is what we're looking for in the organization, then yeah, we've probably got a match here. And the truth is that all of those things, education, experience, credentials, are the worst possible predictors of fit. They're the worst possible predictors of how long somebody's going to stay in a job and how productive they're going to be while they're there.
Wow.
So what, I mean, is it really more of a personality factor that kind of helps to determine the fit?
Well, personality is part of it, but it's a really small part, yeah. Maria. You know, I think the personality is what shows up. It's how the way we are shows up in a conversation or in a relationship or an interaction. What's a much more reliable predictor of fit is who I really am deep below that mask that is personality, because that's just the surface part of it.
Wow, you know, it sounds almost like a dating service. We go out a few times, I buy you dinner and drinks, and then we see
we get to know each other.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, see if maybe this is a relationship that's going to work.
But that's the part that really gets missed in the hiring process. I mean, you know, career fairs or interviews in organizations all follow the same steps when you think about it. I mean, we look at the resume, and the statistics around the level of embellishment that goes into resumes are absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've been taught for the last, I don't know how many years, that you have to present yourself in a certain way on paper. And
whether that's who you are or not.
That's right.
Whether that's who you are or not, and for crying out loud, don't talk about any of your shortcomings or any of the things that you may not do so well. Let's make sure we turn up the volume on how great we are. So that's the piece of paper now that becomes our admission ticket into the rest of the dance. So how does the rest of the dance go? Well, I go into an organization, I sit down with an interviewer, and frankly, we spend an hour lying to each other.
Mm-hmm. It's a good thing we don't get hooked up to a lie detector test.
Oh, my goodness. You know, so the candidate's really working hard to present themselves in the best possible light, and the interviewers working really hard to present the organization in the best possible light and telling me how great it's going to be to work there. And as we go through this dance, it's really the one who makes the fewest mistakes that wins and advances.
Yeah. So if this resume idea isn't really, you know, isn't the best way to do it, I mean, what other way is there?
It's really very simple. And you know, as we've begun working with clients over the last several years to see how things can be done differently, the first thing that we did was we did away with the resume. So as we begin working with our clients, our first step is to build them a hiring portal that exists on the internet. So candidates can view the opportunities, learn about the organization, interact with the organization in a casual way on their own time, at their own convenience. When they identify a position that they're interested in, the system actually invites them in to complete their first interview online. And so the interview is not your usual behavioral interview where, you know, we ask questions about
what would
ridiculous
you do
things.
If, yeah.
Tell me about a situation when you had an irate customer.
Right.
What did you do?
Right.
You know, we all know what the answer should be when we get those questions, and so that's usually how we couch our answer. The questions that we build into the online process are all about understanding the candidate's attitudes towards things that are important to their success on the job. So what are your attitudes towards certain types of supervision? towards certain types of jobs, towards certain types of coworkers, or something as simple as serving customers. What's good customer service to you? And what we do is we ask candidates to give us examples of things that have worked really well for them and things that don't work so well for them. And it's always in the third person, so they're not talking about themselves. It's stuff like, tell me about the best manager you ever had a chance to work for. What was it about that person that made them such a good manager? And who was the worst manager, and what was it about them? And so the person in the administrator's seat on the organization side, as they're viewing these interview results coming through the system, they can look at a candidate's answers to the interview questions and very quickly form an opinion of whether the candidate's likely to be happy working for Ed in accounting, knowing what we know about Ed, doing the type of work that's going to be required of the person, and working with the type of individuals in our culture.
So how much time do you spend working with the employer? As much time as you spend with the possible candidates?
No, in fact, all our work is with the employer. So our role, Matt, is to install the hiring process for the organization and to teach them how to do it very differently from the way they've ever done it before.
So in a way, like the questions you're talking about, to me, those are the questions that would normally be asked in a face-to-face interview, in a sense. But is that just that isn't something that's happening?
Often we miss the boat. And so very skilled interviewers, people who do it for a living, might get to that level of information, that level of detail with a candidate. But they're usually so wrapped up in this dance that we talked about earlier on.
The surface questions that they don't get through the meat.
It's completely superficial and meaningless stuff.
What's the success rate of your service in dealing with employers and getting them a different approach?
The measures are a little bit different from client to client because we always run with what it is they're already measuring. But the results are staggering. I mean, in every case, we find that the return on the investment is somewhere in the order of 600% or higher. Sometimes that's measured by a reduction in turnover. So we're working with one of Canada's major grocery chains. Their turnover reduced from 50% to 20% over the course of the first 18 months. And they had 30,000 people go to their site to complete the first interview online, which was far more than they ever had coming in the door before asking to apply. In other organizations, it's increases in productivity, increases in customer satisfaction. The metrics are always a little bit different, but the results are always solid.
All right.
Time for a fresh approach.
Yeah. All right. Jan is Hiring Smart. To get in touch with him, hiringsmart.ca. And thanks so much, Jan, for coming in.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.